have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary horror podcast here. I'm your host Coale, and with me as always I have my good friend and co-host Aaron. Aaron, howdy doody, buddy?
Good? Is that a proper answer to that question?
Yes.
Howdy doody?
Yes.
Pretty good duty, my friend.
All right. I'm glad
Fat
the duty
duty.
is going good. The Call of Duty, all
It's running.
that stuff.
It's a runny duty.
Ew. So today's film we're going to be talking about, because I don't have a smoother transition than the runny poo, is talking about the thing from Another World. Another World. So, so we are jumping about 20 years in the future from our last film, The Invisible Man. Now, with this, we already watched John Carpenter's The Thing, which is a remake of this film, and this film is an adaptation from the book Who Goes There? And from just as a light overview, you liked John Carpenter's The Thing relatively well, correct?
Yeah, I thought it was a cool setting and a cool mystery and a cool alien thing, and whoa. You know.
And so do you have any expectations going to a film that is much older, that was the inspiration for The Thing?
Man, I mean, I kind of expect it to be the same but older, and that'll probably be different, you know? I'm assuming it's still in the Arctic. I'm assuming it's still mysterious alien, who done it? Where is it? Who would it be? Is it Among Us? Is it is going to have Among Us vibes? That's what I assume, but I know nothing about this film besides the context of, the John Carpenter film and other things I know about shit related to the John Carpenter film. Yeah,
it's definitely interesting that the remake is definitely more popular in our modern day culture than the original film is, specifically. So it's definitely kind of interesting to go back to the original film as opposed to a remake, which usually people look back at the originals more than remakes, but this is almost vice versa.
True.
Because in all honesty, I didn't even know this was a film whenever I was younger, because I always heard about The Thing and everything, because people talked about it constantly, but that was about the extent of it. But I'm very curious about this film to see how much inspiration John Carpenter took, or basically did his own thing with his own film compared to this one there. But I'm kind of going in with like intermediate expectations, I would say, because I have not seen this film. Kind of like going in being like, don't be like too amazed in everything, but I am expecting something that must have gripped John Carpenter to be like, I want to make a movie out of this.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, aside from that, I know you said you didn't have any prior experience to knowing about it.
It's a much older film than John Carpenter's, which is already kind of an older film. So like I'm not expecting any more action or faster pace, because it is, but I feel like that's gonna be a vibe for this movie, because The Thing was already a little bit of a tension building, slow burner mystery kind of. Ooh, this is eerie. And so, I mean, I feel like older films are, because they might not show as much violence or as much, risque things as modern horror films. But I feel like, this is the subject where an older film could still capture that vibe and that essence. So I'm kind of excited for it. I like Frankenstein. I liked, I liked certain aspects of the movie we just watched, The Invisible Man, that are all, much older than this film we're about to watch, but it's still, the vibes of films from decades and decades past can be slower, but I feel like it might service this plot well.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely curious on kind of how the horror vibes from the 50s are comparatively to the 30s that we've seen, and we'll basically be able to tell you about all them sweet frosty deets here in just a little bit. So stay tuned, everyone. Whenever we get back, we'll tell you our thoughts about The Thing from Another World.
Well, isn't this a fine song and dance?
What are you getting so hot about?
Keep your shirt on.
Where do you get off making remarks like that?
Supposing I say you're a lunkhead.
Well, I ain't much for supposing.
Well, supposing you were.
Well, maybe I'm through supposing and I'm fixed to start figuring.
Horseradish.
Well, aren't you a pocket full of firecrackers?
Oh, yeah? You got something to say about it?
I'll say plenty.
And we are back from our expedition of watching The Thing from Another World. And Aaron, yes, what are your thoughts about The Thing from Another World?
Yeah, it was interesting. Well, I wasn't expecting that cadence of dialogue, man. It was like rapid fire conversations talking over each other. It was like a mix of like Aaron Sorkin dialogue and like Always Sunny. just people yelling over each other and just a lot of just rapid fire dialogue that doesn't necessarily like I don't know, like a lot of it was really good and then some of it was like, is this necessary? Because it's just like walls of text, man. People interrupting each other. I mean, it was not for the pace of the movie being as kind of slow as I expected. I wasn't expecting the dialogue to be that fast. It was a little whirlwindy at times. But...
Oh my gosh. Now all I want is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia does the thing. That's just what I want now.
Trapped in the Arctic.
That just sounds like a good episode, dude. So, Rob McElhenney, I know you're listening in totally to our podcast. Do it.
Honestly, a lot of the things they did in the movie were probably things that they would do in Always. just accidentally setting everything on fire. Just like they fuck up in some remarkable ways.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm definitely glad you enjoyed the film and everything. For me, it's one of those things that the dialogue was so heavy.
Thick, yeah.
And while I understood that they're talking about exposition, plot, and stuff like that, there was, at least in my opinion, a little bit too much. Like, it's just, they were doing nothing but talking.
Yeah, no, I would agree. That's definitely one of the faults I have with this film, because even though I found the dialogue to be well written for the most part, and even interesting when I could understand it.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
It was just too much. It was, it was just walls and walls of dialogue.
Yeah, just very much a sensory overload in that regard there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've gotten our opening thoughts done. So obviously we'll try to save the rest of our opinions for the rest of the review here. So just to give an overview of the plot of The Thing from Another World.
What's it about? I'm gonna tell you what's it about, Aaron.
So basically, the U.S. Air Force is called to investigate this crash landing that occurred near this scientist base close to the North Pole. And whenever some soldiers from the U.S. Air Force go out and discover it, turns out a flying saucer has crashed into the North Pole there. And from there, they discover that there is a body there, which they then proceed to harvest from the ice. And as they bring it in, they're curious as to, just the fact that they have a life form and everything and what to do with it. And due to circumstances, things start to get a little bit
Heated.
and the plot continues on. It's going to be one of those reviews, boys and girls. Plot-wise, it is interesting to see this plot because, again, as we've talked about before, we've watched The Thing, which we will try to, in case for some reason you haven't seen the episode on The Thing, we'll try to keep it to light basis. But it is interesting kind of comparing this film to that film because The Thing takes place in the Antarctica. Towards the South Pole, whereas this one takes place in the North Pole. And not only that, events that happen in this movie, they discover at another scientist base in Antarctica whenever they see that they were the first ones to find it. So it's kind of interesting seeing those parallels and being like, oh, okay. And kind of seeing how John Carpenter took this story and then adapted it into his own narrative there. Because, yeah, surprisingly, plot-wise, it ended up being kind of different from The Thing.
Yeah, there were several major differences, although the overarching story, if you slap them side by side and walk backwards, I mean, they're pretty similar movies, pretty similar plots, but it's, yeah, the way they handled most elements are drastically different, including the monster, yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting because I was like, we both went in with a certain expectation of like, this is kind of how the story's going to be. And at least for me, at the very least, I was definitely surprised with how different it was.
Yeah.
Because supposedly the book is more accurate, I guess, to The Thing there with the more whodunit aspect. But there's not a whole lot of whodunit. It's more
No.
what done it.
Right, yeah, because the Thing, the John Carpenter film is definitely like, it could be anywhere. Ooh, and this movie is less about that and just like, we gotta not die, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I mean, plot-wise, I still think it's perfectly fine and everything it is. I think it's just the way, the speed it progresses.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of meandering on words, and, they are talking about plot points. It's not like they're, talking about stuff that's not related at all
Right.
whatsoever, but it just was so much.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I get it.
It's like he was a really big fan of the book, whoever directed this, and was like, no, we gotta get this passage in because it was so good. And then it's just like, they're just reading the entire page verbatim or something. Because it's like, yeah, I get it. That's good content. It's good lore or whatever. But like, bro, that felt like a 2-hour movie. I know it wasn't.
It really did. It genuinely did. And I believe... how long was it? It was about an hour and 27 minutes, but
Yeah.
it felt way longer. It felt way longer. And not only that, the thing that I found the most disorienting, how many characters are in the movie, and
There
they're all
is a lot.
intermingling with one another.
And they're almost all white men that look like, because it's a black and white movie.
Yes.
And they're all in army uniforms or something, and it's just like, oh, okay, which one is this? All right.
Oh my gosh. And it's like one of those things that I usually am pretty good about trying to remember who's who, what character, I watched Game of Thrones. I kept up with the characters, the plot
yeah,
lines,
But no,
everything.
they're all named the same thing.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. This film, I had no idea who 66% of everybody was.
There were a lot of just people in the background that were like in the base and stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just definitely I knew the few characters that were clearly kind of the forefront characters. The rest of the characters would intermingle in and out there, and it'd be like, I have a line of exposition.
Right.
Or it's like, I have this remark here. And it just popping in and out and basically serpentining through.
It didn't help that almost no one was referred to by their name. It's like the captain or this guy, you, general, here, come here, sergeant, here, lieutenant, whatever. And it's like, ooh, there's no names, I don't know who's who. I do feel like by the end of it, the important characters I had down, you know what I mean? There's the reporter guy, there's the captain guy, there's the love interest secretary lady, there's Captain Science Man, there's the doctor, and then there's the radio dude, those were, and then there's Ideas guy, who was in the army. Those are the 7 that I'm like, these are important. But then, there's also just, that's a lot to be important, first off. But then there's also just, there's the extra scientist guy that's the, plant dude. That's just kind of important. And then there's another person on the science team. And then there's people, the pilot for the plane was a different guy. And it's just, it's, hard to keep up whenever they all just randomly pop back in and have an important line of dialogue.
Yeah. It was one of those things where it's just... It was interesting because it's been a while since I've watched a film where I'm like, I don't have an idea of who any of these people are, and I'm trying to get a grasp of who they are. Because, again, not to draw comparisons to the John Carpenter's Thing, but I feel like it's going to be inevitable, especially for this review.
Sure.
You could tell each person who they were because they were defined. They had certain characteristics about themselves that defined themselves from one another. They looked entirely different from one another. Everybody looked exactly the goddamn same except for a few individuals there.
There were a few. You could tell generally apart the research based team and the Air Force, and then the reporter guy. Like, those were like the three categories you could kind of like separate people, but then within those, yes, it was very difficult to identify.
Yeah, and it just becomes hard for me to try to enjoy it because I'm just like, I'm trying to listen to them, but again, they're like spouting off dialogue, like they're the old time to reporters. Every time they talk really super fast and everything.
And then all of a
like,
sudden, they interrupt you. And
yes, that's correct. That's actually what it is all
And
the
then I have
time.
to interrupt
what
you
I
now,
mean?
but
Oh,
there's
perfect. That's
separate ones.
exactly what happens all the time. And there's a thing from another world going on there. I mean, that's like the whole film. Like, it's like they only had so much film and they had to shoehorn so much lines there, but I never felt like any of them like. And we'll talk about this more with the characters. I feel like there's only one character that had all of their garbage together and had to keep everybody else in line, and was the only one that was smart, the one that knew what to do, and the one who had complete control there. And I will mention that character right now, and that's Nikki Nicholson, played by Margaret Sheridan.
True.
That woman
kept it together.
She kept it together. Like, we've joked the last two films about the female leads just being like stereotypical, like, ooh, women faint, they're just needing a man's strength. This woman held everybody together.
True.
If this woman was not in the film, they would literally be beating everybody together with sticks or whatever, or something like that. Bunch of goddamn Neanderthals.
She had a remarkable amount of agency for like the one woman character in a movie from the 50s. Yeah, she was good. In every scene she was in, she wasn't just like, I'm fond, even though she was the love interest of like the captain or whatever, her purpose was more than just like, oh, you're so handsome, whatever, she had some spunk, she had some bite, and she would talk back, and she would, she did her job, and she did it well, and she did her job better than anyone else on that base did.
Yes, that's exactly. She was the only person. Even though I felt like we were supposed to be like, oh, the captain of the Air Force, that's the person, that's the hero, that's everything.
Well,
no.
I do feel like the movie, I feel like it's well written, and the characters are well written in the sense that, like, you have the conflicts within, in addition to, of course, the alien that might be trying to kill them. But you have the Air Force, and his responsibility is like keep human life safe, don't let this leak to the press, blah blah blah. And then you have the science, who's like the world must know, and we must research, and don't hurt this thing. You know what I mean? And so like those sort of balancing acts throughout the movie, I felt like were well characterized. And then you have the weird like third outlier guy who is the reporter that's just like worried about this making it to the news, and he was honestly one of the more competent ones too, because he was like the voice of the audience a lot of the times, where he's like, wow, you did this, fucking brilliant, guys. Like, he wasn't afraid to just trash them, even though he's there as their guest or whatever.
That is very true.
And I do feel like there was like, even though they were fucking up constantly, both big parties had like an air of competence. You know what I mean? They'd be like, yes, of course we just accidentally, destroyed this entire room or whatever. But well, now I'm doing this cool experiment. It's like the next scene they redeem themselves, and then the following scene is just like, I can't be specific right now without spoiling anything, but you know what I mean, where it's like they would just fuck up on a massive scale right from the start, and then the next scene is like, well, that's a good idea, and then it's like, well, no, that went terribly wrong, and then well, there's another good idea from the other side. Let's see how this one develops.
Yeah, I really like that you're able to categorize this for me, because I do think it is interesting that you have, like, basically alien life form discovered on Earth, and you have the Army's thoughts on it, the scientists' thoughts on it, and the press and general audience stuff. And I think that is a unique thing, that it ends up being more of a philosophical talk as to, like, it's funny because I feel like they seem to be setting it up philosophically, like what to do, but then they get to Neanderthal mode where As soon as
Right.
it pops up, they're like, kill it! Kill it!
Right. Because so far it kills them. We got to figure out how to kill
Yeah.
it.
And it was just funny because, again, like with the character Nikki, I felt like she was the one who had control, in many ways, of the characters there. But even just would, like, give remarks in her own thoughts, even though nobody asked. And then they're like, yeah, she's onto something, boys. You know, why don't we do this? And then they break out their clubs and everything.
I love they do. I feel like this movie is written well, even though the dialogue, the way it's presented, is too much. But I feel like it's written well, plot wise, everything wise. I love the way that what's her Margaret? Is that her name, Margaret, or is that the actress?
That's the actress name. Nikki is her
Nikki,
name.
okay. Nikki, that I love the way that, again, nobody calls anybody by their fucking names.
Yes.
But I love the way that they establish like a little trope of her like asking if anybody wants coffee, and then it's just her excuse to actually get in the room, and they like catch on real easy, you know. She's like, does anyone want coffee? And no, but you can come in, you know. The dialogue's funny, and a lot of times it's just disserviced by the fact that half the time you don't catch the jokes because they're just immediately talked over by something else.
Yes, that's exactly it. So major kudos to Margaret playing Nikki. I felt like she played it competently, and it was a very well, fairly strong at the time female character. You know, so major kudos to that. You know, being progressive. Yippee.
Relatively, I mean,
yes, relatively for
role,
the 50s.
Her role is still mostly love interest to the captain.
Oh, for sure.
But she's a spunky one with some bite.
I guess, especially into comparison to the last two films we watched,
Sure,
it's like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
thank God, someone can write a woman character, not as a cardboard cutout.
True.
Moving on to other characters, we do have the captain of the Air Force, Captain Patrick Hendry. I'm not joking whenever IMDb has never been more important for this review than anything else.
I don't
I
remember
would,
their names.
I could not tell you their names. Played by Kenneth Tobey. And I feel like he's very traditional, no nonsense, but still likes to be a little, like, playful in the aspects. Anyways, but overall, he seems like just stereotypical hero of the story sort of thing.
Yeah, he definitely plays the, like, serious, this is level-headed in the face of an immense and unusual danger, but then, on the flip side, he's also got a Riz side. He's kind of the Rizzler,
Yeah, and this film's like, we'll get into it later, I guess, but this film has one scene in it that I was like, wow, okay, we're getting a little kinky here.
No, true,
Gotcha.
true.
It's kinky for the 50s.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was funny seeing him because, again, I mean, I wouldn't say he's like super suave. He's very like militant with his attitude and everything.
He's definitely an army kind of guy.
Yes, exactly, which I don't feel like is bad. Again, I do think like the film is, now Aaron pointed this out, I'm like, man, you're right, dude. Definitely trying to go for the like military aspect versus scientific aspect, and then press and general audience aspect.
Right. There's a sort of a three-way conflict of the right to know versus the safety of humankind versus the advancement of science, and it's that conflict that gets played out way more than the actual conflict of an alien trying to kill them all. Yeah.
Good Lord, yes. And that was something I was not expecting, that took me a while to adjust to, that it's like, okay, we're in for this kind of movie.
Right.
There, because there's definitely not that aspect of all of that storyline stuff and John Carpenter's The Thing.
Right.
It was definitely more of just about the mystery about it and everything else. But I mean, all in all, I feel like he does perfectly fine, seems competent with his decisions and everything. He's just very like, yep, let's get down to business,
Right.
Moving on. One person that killed me in the plot is Dr. Arthur Carrington, played by Robert Cornwaith. And he's the lead scientist, the one who had the slicked back hair, the suede suit, and had like that. He almost delivered a dialogue like an alien Vincent Price or something like
Yes.
that.
Yes, his character in this universe apparently has won like every science award on the planet. He's like one of the most brilliant men, and he's, you know, very, very passionate about the subject. So you can just imagine how he reacts when he finds an alien craft and body that they harvest. But
The thing that killed me is like his hair is slicked back, but it almost looked like it was slicked back with like ice or something. Like
yeah,
it's
well,
like
he's sort of a silver fox. So he's got that stark white hair and that suave black suit. You know, he was one of the characters that was visually well defined. I will say that him and the reporter you could both kind of make out in a crowd.
Yes.
and everyone else kind of blends in.
I would 112% agree with
And
that
Nikki,
statement.
obviously, but that's because she's like the only woman.
Yes, she's the only woman. Which I did look at the credits, and there's like
There's a few.
it's well, and it's funny because they're like not a lot of them are credited. A
No.
lot of actors are not credited, so whenever you get to
Yeah.
the main
Oh, yeah.
credits of the film, there it shows only half of it.
Because I don't know if any of them have lines except for her. I don't remember any of them.
I
talking about
honestly
her. Yeah.
can't remember either. So yeah, I think you're definitely right about that. But yes, the doctor, he stood out, especially with the way he talked, the way he looked, and who he was. It was definitely, I feel like whenever they wrote the film, they wanted one figure to represent their faction.
Right,
there.
right, yeah, and I do think those figures are fairly well defined, both like all not just visually, but in the way they talk, the way they act, their personality. I feel like they haven't done character a disservice when they're building these characters and implementing them in the film. It's just, again, I know we keep harping back to the dialogue, but the plot and characters both suffer by the fact that half the time you don't know what they're saying or
Yes.
like what exactly, because they're talking over each other, they're interrupting each other, they're getting a quick joke in that might go over your head or whatever. But as far as like, I feel like they wanted to really well define, and they did succeed in well defining the captain, the press guy, the Nikki, and the science dude. So
And in all honesty, he might be one of my favorite people to watch because he just always had a way of delivering his lines
Yes.
so bizarrely. Like this actor clearly was like, how would the smartest man in the world talk and act there specifically? Because
and
he's like,
also in the 50s.
yeah, in the 50s. That is a wild freaking combination.
So if you can just imagine, if you're imagining a voice in your head, you're probably correct. He's got like a raised eyebrow at all times, and he's like, "Well, doctor, I ain't you know."
Yeah, like
Almost.
he speaks like slowly, deliberately with every line where he's like, this thing that's from another world must be discovered for science. You know, it killed me. In all honesty, every time he came on, I'm like, hold on, he's going to say something silly. But he was a great addition and genuinely enjoyable to watch, and I felt like was a good character to throw into the mix to add more conflict besides big alien kill it.
Right. Right. Especially since they can't. I mean, it was like the 50s. I was surprised a little bit by how much they showed in this movie, but even then, it's not graphic in any sense, in any to any major degree. But it was. They did show a couple things that I was like, oh dang. I wouldn't have thought they would have put that in a movie that they put on the silver screen in 1950 whatever, but
Yes.
cool with me.
Yeah, for sure. So he ends up being a pretty fun character to watch overall. The other character I will mention, and in all honesty, is probably the last big character, I would argue. I mean, there's other characters that pop up, but I honestly couldn't tell you any defining thoughts about them besides, yep, they spouted exposition or thoughts. There is Ned Scott, played by Douglas Spencer, who is the reporter.
Oh, the reporter,
Coming.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. See, look, we're not joking. We have no idea who these guys' names are. There's so many people, and they talk so quickly and everything else. It's like, good Lord Almighty. I felt like he was good, and he had a couple of good snarky lines, especially whenever it came to the approach both the scientist and the military had whenever it came to discovering the alien craft and everything.
Yeah, he definitely at times was the voice of the audience where, like, you know, So they make a mistake, and they're very, like, both the military folks and the scientist folks are just very methodical. So they're like, well, carry on, and this progress guy's just like, well, aren't you fucking brilliant, like, you guys, I can't even say the kind of shit they did without spoiling it. But...
Yes, exactly. There's definitely a couple of good lines, and not gonna lie, he does speak the voice of reason a lot of times where he's like, well, that was stupid.
Yeah.
Well, way to go.
Good job, guys.
Yes.
Can I get a picture at least?
Yeah.
The guy loved his pictures, understandably. But...
Yes, for sure. That was the real conflict. He wasn't able to get his photos.
He was sort of, by the end of the movie, I was like, all right, this guy, because I loved him in the beginning, and then as time went on, he was just like, did I get any messages yet? Just like every scene he's in, just like, any message through, please.
That's so true. He just kind of defaulted back and everything.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And
yeah.
He goes from, like, caring about his inevitable death, like, you would think that's where everybody else is going, and by the end of the story, he doesn't seem to care about that at all. He's just like, my editor's gonna kill me. Like,
yeah, it's definitely funny seeing his character. Again, he does, especially towards like the majority of the third act until the very end, he just doesn't say too much there. I feel like he's pretty quiet. But yeah, overall, I still felt like the actor did a good job and everything. It was good. So, yep, I can't agree more with that. I'm going to be honest. There are other characters that were credited. I literally, like I said, you could hold a gun to my head and say, tell me your thoughts. And it's like, it's fine.
I feel like...
White guy in the 50s. Right. I don't know.
I feel like we don't have to talk about them much, but I do feel like each side had one minor character that they developed pretty good. And I don't know their names again, but one of them was the botanist on the science side who did serve as a little bit of a foil to the main giant science genius guy, kind of pushing back against some of his more desperate ideas at the end. And then the on the military side, I don't know who it was. Like, I think he was a sergeant or a lieutenant or something, because that's all they called him was by his fucking title. But he just always had an idea. I swear he came up with like every idea that's in the film on the military side is just him. He's just like, I've got an idea, sir.
If I had to guess, like I said, it's so bad that, like, I'm even looking at IMDb and I'm just like looking at the names and I'm like, they all look the same, dude. This is the same photo on repeat. But I'm guessing it's like Lieutenant Eddie Dykes, who's the one, like the young one who always had like the black slicked back hair or whatever.
Yes.
Looked like a young...
That guy.
Yeah. This guy right here, I have no idea. This is
and all the photos are weird. I don't even know.
This is such a terrible freaking photo. Yeah, but yes, there was supporting characters for each side, whether it was military, science. Those were the main ones, since obviously Ned Scott, the reporter, was by himself, and then Nikki was just working for the base, basically. But yeah, I mean, there's not really it's not to say the actors we can't name did a bad job. It's just they're not defined enough to where we can have that valid of opinion. Besides, I mean, there's a couple of funny moments, but it's more so just about what happens with them in the scene than actually them specifically.
I suppose. Yeah, I guess I would vibe with that comment. I mean, I don't fault this movie for their characters. I do think the characters are well developed. It's just, it's hard to tell them apart at the beginning. And if you really don't grasp on to the very thick, difficult to wade through dialogue, then you're gonna be lost.
Oh my goodness, yes. Absolutely. The only character I could even say we could talk about, and obviously pending on spoilers, since it is the main titular character of the title, the Thing itself, played by James Arness, and I honestly can't even tell you that much about it because
I love the Thing.
Yes.
Is very different than the Thing of John Carpenter's movie, where I guess I can't really reveal many details about that until you watch it, so go watch that, or stick around for spoilers, folks.
Yes.
But yeah, no, this guy, unlike the alien that they were combating in John Carpenter's movie, I mean, this was basically like Frankenstein. He's just a fucking massive dude that they were combating.
Mm-hmm. It was interesting because they did, at least whenever it came to the lore of the alien, they tried to give ideas about its anatomy and how different it was, and tried to get scientific.
Was interesting. It was buried in a weight of all kinds of other details
Yes.
about everything else and what they ate for lunch, and you know what, if the transmissions have come in or not, or and the love affair with these two people. Just so many fucking details in this movie. They could have cut a lot. But yeah, no, I did think it was interesting. They compared him to a carrot.
Yeah, that was the biggest. They just latched onto that. You mean to tell me he's like a vegetable, like a carrot? You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's what that's again where the reporter was like the voice of reason or whatever, because the army's just like, whatever, kill it. How do we kill it, sir? And then the scientists are like, oh yes, no vascular system detected, and blah blah blah. The reporter's just like, what do you mean? He's like, a vegetable? Yes, a super carrot. That's why our bullets had no effect or whatever.
That's like such the strangest comparison. This thing is like a vegetable. But yeah, like design-wise, it was one of those things where, I don't know, I was a teensy bit underwhelmed. I felt like the design was fine. It was
of the actual monster?
Yes, the actual monster.
It was,
like,
I would agree with you there. For as creative and interesting as almost every other part of this movie was, yeah, he was just a big dude.
Yes. And it's one of those things that it was more so the ideology that was more interesting than the monster itself.
Yeah, the way they described the monster, if they just never showed it and was talking about it the whole time, you'd be like, this thing is crazy cool.
Yes,
but then
exactly.
You see it and it's like, wow, they got a large actor to put some makeup on.
Hey, I got an idea. What if we get a very tall dude, give him some shoulder pads, put a weird mask on, and some fingy gloves?
Yeah. And then he can walk around and grunt.
Yes.
Except for the noises he makes at the beginning when he's like first kind of revealed, or they're first looking for him, those are great noises. He's just like high-pitched little squeals. And...
Yeah, it was definitely one of those things that, I know John Carpenter's the monster wasn't the focal point, but more so the mystery. And then they would show up really messed up scenes with the thing and everything. Don't go into this film expecting a lot of monster action. It's definitely more of a talky movie.
A lot of
than
talking.
Actual action movie.
They do talk about the monster most of the time. But it's still very talky.
Yes, for sure. So overall, I thought it was just very kind of like, okay, you know. Yeah, and that's pretty much the main gist of most of the characters. Again, we might mention like specific characters later on, like Aaron already has, whenever it comes to talking about specific scenes in the spoiler section. But for now, we're just gonna put a cap on it and return back to it later. One aspect I that is honestly, genuinely, probably my favorite aspect of the film is the setting. Yeah. I felt like they were like, okay, it's the North Pole, get all that snow. We need lots of snow and everything. You see snow 24/7 pouring in. And not only that, you see the actor's breath. Like they were actually in a cold environment there, which just sells the frostiness of it all. And that was one of my favorite things about John Carpenter's The Thing was the setting. Just that frozen overlay of a setting, basically. And it was really nice. I was very pleasantly surprised with the budget setting, just how much so they allowed. And not only that, but like the plane shots.
Yeah, I was just about to say, yeah, they got great aerial shots of the location, like as the establishing shot as they fly in. But then they also got shots like of the planes flying through this Arctic wasteland, like, and it doesn't look, maybe the practical effects were that good, but like for the most part, these looked like all just like they were filming, somewhere very far north.
Yeah, no, and it just really helps sell it as opposed to feeling like, okay, they're all like on a Hollywood studio lot or something like that. It felt like a cold atmosphere in the film, which is good. And not only that, but it's like they even had all like the sled dogs and everything there. They had a ton with that, and whenever they go out to the crash site and everything, it's like very nice visually there whenever they go kind of spread out and everything, trying to see the shape of the craft that crashed and everything. It's very nice scene, and that's like a couple of moments where I'm like, okay, now I know why John Carpenter threw on that specific scene on Halloween on the television. You know, it just visually stands out and everything. And even the title card, I mean, it's exactly the same one that John Carpenter reused for his film and stuff. They just add From Another World at the bottom.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely a lot of visually appealing stuff. I will say the overall inside of the base is pretty meh. You know, I felt like they were in the same hallway multiple times because they're like, hey, I'm on this side, over.
Right.
And I just felt like they were using the same hallway, just using...
True. I think it was interesting how they managed to, with something that was so simple as like it's a tin shed research base, you know what I mean? That they did manage to give pretty good diversity in the set pieces. It's like, here's the green room, and here's the radio room, and here's the mess hall or whatever, and the little science area, and of course Nikki's office. I mean,
lots of stuff going on there.
Yeah, lots of hot activity there. I did feel like what they were working with, they did a good job, in my opinion.
Well, that's good, yeah. I guess for me, I was just a little more impressed with, you know, seeing what John Carpenter did with the thing there and making the rooms a little more defined. But you are correct. It was cool kind of seeing the green room and seeing, like... I felt like the filmmaker was very obsessed with showing that this could be an actual place of operation.
Yeah.
That it's not just some ragtag shed in the middle of nowhere or something like that. So I can definitely appreciate that aspect there. But yeah, like I said, the snow, the ice, that was just great. Seeing that. And I will say this, without getting into too big of spoilers, the action set pieces, especially one in particular, I was like, holy cow. They threw all bets on this one scene here just to really play it out like, okay, this is the big scene, you know, and...
Yeah, there's quite a few, like, there's some pyrotechnics, there's some, you know, a lot of the effects that they poured into. It's supposed to have been a big budget film for its day, because I was like, dang, they went all out with that. But...
But that was definitely good. Aside from that, I can't think of anything too noteworthy. Soundtrack I felt like was just on par with what you would expect from a film like this. Nothing too grand, but nothing too terrible.
There's not like a theme or anything I can think of.
No. It's just like, it just feels sort of like generic horror film from like the 50s and earlier.
And a lot of it, like, because I was looking for music or some sort of ambient noise for a lot of it, but there just wasn't a lot in most of the film. It's just a lot of dialogue.
Yes. Oh boy, lots of dialogue there. Aside from that, without spoiling anything, is there anything else you did want to talk about before jumping into spoilers, Aaron?
Boy howdy, I don't think so. Yeah,
okay.
no.
Yeah, no worries. We'll just go ahead and just jump to the good old rating here then. So, Aaron, tell me what you rate The Thing from Another World.
All right. Listen, I honestly think this is a pretty good movie with two sort of things that really dampen it. I mean, I honestly think the characters are pretty fantastic. I feel like the reason you can't separate them out is partially because it's black and white. But it's partially because, you know, they're all fucking talking to it. We're talking a lot about how much they're talking, but it's really a big damper on the film. The dialogue's not even bad. It's good dialogue. It's just if you cut half of it, it would be a normal pace, you know. And it's all that dialogue sandwiched in between a very slowly paced movie, which just feels like it should be going faster, but then at the end of it, it's like, God, was that a 2-hour movie? No, it was an hour and 20 minutes. But they packed 2 hours worth of words in there. So, but no, honestly, cinematography for the 50s, amazing. Special effects for the 50s, amazing. the acting, all in all, pretty good. It's just, yeah, the writing was good. The plot, the way it ended, kind of poo-poo for me.
Yeah.
The pacing, pretty poo-poo. But all in all, the plot was interesting. It was engaging. The lore was interesting. The source material they brought from was interesting. The monster itself, So all these things combined, with my powers combined, I give this a 7. I give it a 7. It's not the most enjoyable 7 because of how kind of much of a slog it is. But if you've had a couple cups of coffee and you're ready to pay attention to some fast-paced dialogue, then yeah, I mean it's a good movie that's held back by a little bit too much in a couple areas.
Okay, so you would say it's right on par with John Carpenter's The Thing.
It's a very different 7, but it's a 7 nonetheless. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I could totally understand and respect that there. I don't know if I'm going to be that generous. Because for me, it's one of those things that while it does have interesting ideas and everything else like that, again, Aaron's not joking. Like, whereas like something like Rosemary's Baby, which is like 2.5 hours long, felt like 2.5 hours, you felt like you got so much out of that 2.5 hours. This just feels like a longer film, and it's actually just a short film, and it's like a slog trying to get through. Because again, whenever it comes to the action, like, I'm not one of those things of like, I need an explosion or something going on, but like I needed some sort of like tension, suspense, anything at all whatsoever. Like, I can count on my hand how many times the thing actually shows up or is like around or something.
Sure.
And again, I know it's more of a talk about like theological or something like that, but to compare it to something like, say, Frankenstein, which I felt like was a good mix of like showing you the monster while also having deep philosophical talks about the meaning of discovering something like this, where it's such an even toss between. This one just feels more talky than actually, like, what is it? I remember hearing this in my creative writing class. It's like, show don't talk or something like that.
Show don't tell. Yeah, that's classic
Yes.
in movies and writing of all kind.
I felt like that kind of needed to be implemented a little bit. And again, the dialogue isn't necessarily bad. There's just a lot of it. Everybody's interjecting themselves over it. So it is just kind of like, holy cow, yeah, I cannot pay attention. Like, this is something like in a book, if something was happening like this, I'd have to go back and reread the paragraph or something like that. But there's still stuff to appreciate it, because the idea of them discovering this and trying to figure out what to do is interesting. Love the setting entirely. Film wise, shot pretty good and everything. The thing is kind of, just definitely kind of
more interesting on paper than whenever you
yes.
see it. Yeah.
And so because of that, I'm probably going to rate this like about a 4.5, I think.
Okay.
I don't know if I'd go down to a 4. Not quite up to a 5 comparatively to other films I've rated on the podcast. So it's like probably in between. If I had to like push it towards one way or another, I don't know, it might go down to a 4 if I had to choose, but I'm more than happy to give it a 4.5. Still enjoyable. There's stuff I enjoy about it. I just don't know how often I would come back to revisit this film as opposed to John Carpenter's The Thing. And trust me, I'm not even that big of a fan of The Thing like other people are. I rated it like a 7 or 8, I remember correctly there. So I'm not even like that die hard there. I think it's just, again, whenever it came to it, there's a lot of talking, and like, I don't really have ADD, but I have just enough to where my brain was just slowly floating out of my skull.
I definitely phased out a couple times, and then had to snap back and be like, all right, what were we doing here? Like,
Yeah, oh my goodness, yes. And with all the characters that they're in and everything, and it just makes it harder to catch on whenever you start to float off and everything, I was like, okay, yeah, this one's a little rough. Still definitely worth something. I see why John was inspired by this film and wanted to remake it and everything. And I still think it's still good. I honestly don't hate the film. It's just pretty much like, it's okay. That's kind of where I'm at with that. So, yeah, definitely had Aaron's perspective on it versus my perspective on it. You could kind of take your guess as to whether you want to go check this film out or not. Either way, definitely a good time to watch this film, especially with like winter going on. It just helps to really sell that atmosphere and everything. So, definitely give it a watch in case you see it streaming online or you see a cheap copy of it or something like that. But without further ado, let's keep moving right along to the spoiler territory. So, Aaron, please tell the audience about the first spoiler you would like to discuss.
Oh, well, this is kind of a double whammy spoiler, because also we'll be spoiling something from The Thing, the John Carpenter flick.
Yes.
Feeling everything in this. So, I was surprised that just about the abilities of the monster, how different they were. John Carpenter's The Thing, it, like, can take over people's bodies or whatever, and you're like, is it this person? Is it this person? Who done it? This one, there was no evidence that kind of thing. He just sucked blood. He was just a vampire carrot, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that made him, like, you know, super powered in the sense of, like, he was frozen in the ice and they heated him up and then he's still alive, and they shoot him and he's still alive, and they cut off his arm and he's still alive. And it's because he just kind of, like, regrows shit, I guess, and he's just big and massive, and they compared his cells to, like, chitin, and you're like, oh, he's just like a, you know, a hard-bodied large carrot that's sentient. But yeah, no, I was surprised because I was in for like a mind fuck. Oh, I was like watching, like, oh, the scientist left the room there, and then, oh, so is it the scientist now? Or that's why he wants to protect it so much, or whatever. But that never came to fruition. It's just the big dude. Yeah.
Yeah, I went through the same thing as well. Like, whenever the captain first leaves and stuff, and he's going off to, like, the room, and I'm like, oh, this is it. This is, like, the moment where the first infection starts or whatever. And then, no, he's just hitting on Nikki, basically.
Yeah.
So that was, you know, and I don't subtract points for the movie because it's like,
No, I wanted a whodunit.
Right.
No.
it's just kind of like what ended up being the monster and the threat just wasn't really that scary or threatening there.
It didn't add a lot of suspense, especially since there was a plot device in there where the fucking ideas guy, I think it's the same guy,
Yes.
had a Geiger counter. No, it must have been one of the science people. Again, they're all the same.
Oh,
fucking same.
it's so insane, dude.
But they found out that early on, that this guy emits radiation, and so they can figure out where he is by determining where the radiation is, you know. And so it does kind of fizzle out any sort of suspense, because whenever he's coming, the thing starts to blink, and they're like, he's coming! And then they prepare for him or whatever. So it's like, you're never getting jump scared by the fucking big old carrot guy.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think the thing that kind of sucks the horror out of this film is horror tends to affect me more whenever the characters are more alienated and everything, or underprepared.
Isolated.
These dudes felt prepared, and there was a lot of them. Just a huge mob of people moving through whenever it came to it. So I never once felt like they were in danger. Because here's the crazy thing. I didn't realize 2 people died in that movie.
You didn't?
Yeah, I didn't realize. Then I'm like,
3 people died. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I think. No.
we never got confirmation on this. You're talking about the main scientist dude at the end?
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
I don't know. Anyways, because they're like, he's already killed 2 of our men. And I'm like, dude, did I blink out or something? You know?
Well, yeah, it was off camera, which is kind of stupid. Because they described it, and they described it pretty gruesome, so I guess I understand why they couldn't show it in the film or whatever. But they said they were trying to protect the greenhouse, right? Or wait for the guy to come back to the greenhouse because they noticed that he had broken in before, that he killed a dog and stuffed it in the little container or whatever. So they had 2 people on guard, and then... or 3 people on guard, rather, and one of them was injured and escaped, and said that he killed the other 2 and hung them upside down.
They were talking so much, I didn't realize he said 2 others had died, because I saw the scene where the dude was injured and everything.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's what he tells them, is that they're like, what happened to the other guy? And they just killed him, or just like, what do you do with him? He says they hung him upside down and slit his throats. So that's why they were talking about later when the science guy is like trying to grow more of these guys with the seed pod that he extracted from the hand. he's feeding him blood from a tube or whatever, and they're like, that's exactly what he's doing in there, is he's growing more or whatever by hanging those two dudes upside down and in the greenhouse growing more carrot men or whatever.
Dude, I must have blinked out super
Yeah, but that's just a plot point that just never gets really recovered or anything. Like in the ending, they were like, okay, like that could have been like instead of the fucking stupid thing where the radio guy was like, we defeated the aliens and also, watch the skies, everybody. It's like, watch the green room. He was growing more of them. Like, are they not going to burst through their moment? That could have been the moment of suspension or something.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things they set up that I thought were supposed to be suspenseful, and then A, they never milked any suspense from them, and then B, they never amounted to anything.
Yeah, it's so strange. Yeah, it's so strange because, like, a lot of stuff to talk about there. Yeah, the plants I thought were going to be a lot bigger of a thing, and then they just kind of drop it off. They don't even destroy it. Like, they just...
Yeah, they don't... I mean, the army guy says he wants to destroy them, and there's army people in that room, so I don't know if he kind of issued an order, but they don't talk about it. They don't show anything. Who knows if those plants got destroyed. Yeah,
it was just a weird thing that I was just like, okay, that's left off. And yeah, I do feel like the reporter guy at the end, whenever he's giving that, report and everything, I feel like it's definitely like one of those like cheesy 50s things where like the character speaks to the audience and says like, you need to be on the lookout for flying saucers and everything.
Yeah, that was dumb. And it also really kind of soiled his character, because he was sort of the voice of reason against both the science people and the... Like they blew up the fucking spaceship with thermite, and he's like, Jesus, like, the biggest discovery of a century, and you guys destroy it. Like, good fucking job, guys. Standard operating procedure. And then they thaw this Iceman out, and he's like, wow, you turned on the electric blanket, and you to thaw this guy out, and now he's killing everyone. Good fucking job, guys. And he's like, yeah, he makes a joke about, yeah, you're probably the only person who could say that they lost a UFO and an alien on the same day. Like, like good job, guys. But then he's just like lauding the accomplishments of the general at the end of it. He's like, we defeated an invading force. Like, no, you didn't. It was a scared carrot guy, and you knew that the whole time. But he just flips completely to the side of the army by the end. It's like the Air Force was directing this movie, and they were like, no, you have to make us look good right now. Like, that's the only way you get to publish this film.
Oh my gosh.
Which is not an outlandish thing, by the way, because the U.S. military funds most major action movies. Marvel is loaded with U.S. military dollars because it ramps up in recruitment. Really? That's why you see a million, like, army guy does cool things and kills brown people movies, because they're all paid for. That's why Hollywood gets like Top Gun and all this shit, all these movies that are like military propaganda movies, is because they're like, yeah, you get to make a movie with our cool jets and shit and tanks and all that cool shit, and we get to get more recruitment. And they're like, so Hollywood's like, great, sounds like a deal. So maybe that was happening in the 50s too, I don't know. But
bro, this is like... I didn't realize that was going on.
Yeah, anytime you see like a cool fucking military copter and like people in the United States military looking cool on screen, you go look up some facts. I bet like half that budget was U.S. military funded. That's where your taxpayer dollars at work.
I mean, if it keeps creating Sonic the Hedgehog movies, I'm all good, baby.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to get on this tangent, but military, I mean, they fund Twitch, they fund like video games, anything that's like cool army guy shooty is probably part of their recruitment campaign, because U.S. military recruitment has gone way down. It has been for decades, and it spiked with 9/11, and we haven't had a 9/11 in a while, so it's been going down. And they're like, how do we get more people to kill themselves for college funding?
I know I'm adding to the derailment of this, but didn't they use like that one character from Neon Genesis Evangelion to recruit people?
Oh,
did you hear that?
I saw the picture of, yes, the MILF from Neon Genesis Evangelion by an army recruiting platform. They get creative. Dude, I had a psyop in my inbox, bro, like 6 months ago. No. You think I'm shitting you, but no, it's like literally a military psychological operation profile. It was like a fake Facebook profile that looks real, and it's some really cute girl, and she's like, I can't remember, but she messaged something, and I was like, nice try, psyop. Like, this is literally like a bot to be like, hey, the military's cool, we've got hot babes. Like, we go scroll on TikTok, scroll through like 50 of them, and if you see one with like, the IDF does this a lot too. They're probably not right now because they're busy blowing up Palestinians, but they used to do that a lot too, because they target the Western world to think that, you know, the Israeli military is really cool, and the U.S. military does this. That's where they got it from, is the U.S. military. Is because it's just like, yeah, just like girls in army uniforms doing little TikTok thing. That bitch is not in the army. She's in the army marketing department to get you to enlist. You know what I mean? She's not out there shooting people in turbans. All right, so.
Well, you know, that would explain the kinky scene in this movie then.
True. That might be onto something there.
Yeah, because that was something that I mean, really, it's pretty freaking tame. But from what I was expecting in this film, I was taken aback. Like, oh, okay, so the captain is tied to a chair.
Yeah, they make a joke about like, you're gonna have to tie me up, and she's like, well, oh, I don't mind that. And he's like, oh, really? And she's like, well, that's your idea. And then the next scene is literally him tied up while she's like sexually interrogating him.
Yeah, while also like taking shots and everything. And I was just like, good Lord Almighty,
like, making him drink. But then they make sure to like bring it back down to 50 standards, where he says something about like, we haven't even kissed yet. Like,
yeah, that
they just slip that in the dialogue.
Yeah, and then not only that, like, he slips out of the rope easily.
yeah. They're like, how long have you been free? Long enough.
Yeah, because
anyways, I have to go do my job now.
Yeah, Lord knows you can't have a dominating woman. But that was definitely a scene that stuck out to me, and I was just like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, I'm for this.
Yeah.
This is fine.
That one and the scene where, like, the alien is getting ripped apart by dogs.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, damn.
The amount of dead dogs in this film is crazy.
True. There were quite a few. And as soon as I saw the dogs, and after seeing John Carpenter's, I was like, yeah, we're probably going to see some dead dogs. That must just be from the book or something. Like,
yeah.
Dogs die.
Yeah, probably, like, initial carrier and stuff. But it was definitely funny just seeing him, like, obviously, it was like a stuffed dog or something like that. Right. Seeing the thing in the horizon slam the dogs down and everything. And so then you just see, like, the limp bodies and everything. Yeah. I can tell you right now, my wife would be majorly pissed if she watched this film. She's like, I want to kill that thing.
It is the thing. Yeah, that, and I was also surprised at, like, as soon as the thing gets out of its icy cocoon or whatever, the guy that was supposed to be watching it, the fucking dumbass that put an electric blanket that was
so insane, because he doesn't want to look at the face. He's like, ugh, and he covers it up.
Which is crazy, because, like, you don't really get a good look at the face when it's in the block of ice, but it looks like a cool alien thing. It's just a black mass, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this is going to be some cool dark brown
yeah.
No, it's just a fucking white guy that looks like Frankenstein.
Yes!
5 head having ass. And so I even thought maybe, like, he takes over somebody's body, because you don't see him come out. You just see the guy scared, and he draws his gun and just fires.
He unloaded, and I thought that was refreshing, to be honest.
It was, yeah. There was a lot of things about this movie that I was like, I didn't expect that, but I liked it.
He unloaded like 10 bullets into a guy, like, immediate, as soon as it's like, ugh.
These guys didn't fuck around. They're not the guys in the horror movie that are like,
oh, well, maybe we just try something.
they're like, kill it now. Like,
yeah.
This is bad news, kill it now.
It was honestly pretty freaking funny how quick to violence they were with this.
It's the Air Force, man. Like, they came fucking locked and loaded, and every idea that guy had was like, here's another way we can do a war crime on this thing. And they're like, hell yeah, let's do it.
Oh my gosh. It was so funny seeing that. And not only that, whenever they decide how to deal with the thing, because that's another thing that bothers me with the thing, is like, it just keeps going back to the base, and I'm guessing it's to try to kill people or something like that.
Well, they kind of explained it as like it needs blood to live or whatever, and then also later they were like, oh no, it's reproducing with the blood. So, like, it can survive out in the cold just fine. It's just there's no life around besides this base, so it keeps coming back. And that's why it goes back to the green room over and over, too. Or the greenhouse.
Oh.
Yeah. Because it is like like a plant, so he wants to be in the plant environment.
That makes sense. One other thing before talking about the extreme, like, levels of violence they put towards the thing and everything. One thing I was surprised is actually seeing them grab, like, the severed forearm there. That was like a little bit shocking, like them showing like a body part like that. Now granted, it looks, they say like, oh well, technically it's not like human, it's more like a, did they say they compared it to like a bug, which is why it was able to be ripped off so easily? Maybe something like that. There's so much words that's like spit out on how it was, but like seeing like the arm and you see like a bloody stump at the end there, and then you see like the hand actually move, and I'm sure at the time it was very shocking to see something like that. So that was nifty. And then whenever it came to figuring out how to deal with this, it's thanks to Nikki being like, well, what do you do with the carrot? You boil it. Right. And it's like, boil it. Fire. Yes. He's not afraid of the ice, so let's burn it.
Yep. Which, honestly, like, I understand why they didn't come to that conclusion sooner, but, like, they blew up his whole spaceship with a thermite bomb. I thought they were going to bring out the thermite again and be like,
that would have been
do a
sweet.
Bomb and explode him, dude.
That's usually the way a lot of these older films end. It's like, big explosion. Right. Do that, but no. And it's not even the final film, like, final scene of the film, basically. Whenever it's like, here, get a lot of kerosene, pour it in buckets, and get ready to pour it on him. Right. And they just light up the entire room he's in. Like, they were just like...
Right. I do love it. It did give me, like, fighting Freddy Krueger vibes or something where they're like, or just like some of these movies where the survivors fight back. They're like, they're doomed to die. This thing is impossibly stronger than them, but they're like, I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to set up some fucking booby traps. And then as soon as you get in, coordinated assault. But
yeah, it was funny because I knew that scene was in the film, and so I honestly thought that was going to be the final scene on how they defeat him and everything. Yeah. But then I was surprised that it wasn't, and he just got out, and then more talking continues and everything, and then they're trying to figure out what to do because I do like this part whenever the base loses heat and everything, and then whenever they talk, you can see their breath. It just helps kind of cement that icy feeling overall.
And it's because the monster's sabotaged. I like that it was an intelligent monster, and that was at least one small part where they were like, this thing's smarter than us, and it's killing us.
It's weird because it said it was like smarter, but whenever it came to like the monster actually appearing, it acted more like a Neanderthal.
It did. Yeah, that was that. There was definitely a disconnect with the way they described the monster, and then every time the monster was on scene. But
yeah, doing that, and I honestly, I felt like the fire thing should have been how they killed it as opposed to how they actually kill it, which is lure him onto an electrified fence where they crank it up and he's basically electrocuted to where he's nothing but a pile of ash. Yeah. That was pretty anticlimactic.
I mean,
for me,
the way that they did it was, I get the plot behind it because it was like the science people and the military people coming together, minus the guy that didn't want to hurt it at all. Because they were like, listen, like fire didn't hurt, like the fire obviously hurt it enough for it to run away. What if we had super duper fire, which is like these massive, like literally all the power of the generator frying the fuck out of this carrot, and they were like, oh, can you do that? And he's like, can you get a couple metal poles? It's like, we got it. And they set up this trap or whatever. So it was the fire thing again. They were just like, yeah, times 1,000.
Well, that's a really good freaking observation. I didn't even think about what if we combine the powers of science and the military?
Because it was the science guy in the room, like after they did the kerosene thing, whenever they were talking about it, that he was like, yeah, this is what we could do, So that was cool to me. But the way that he's supposed to be super smart and he just like stumbles onto their trap where they're obviously waiting to flip a little switch, like, come on, a little closer, come on, and he's like, here, no, a little here, do you want me here? Okay, I'll stand right here. I was like, this guy's not smart at all. I thought he was going to be smart because he busts in the room and then he like grabs one of the poles and it's like, oh, he can use tools. I haven't seen him do that yet. I thought he was just gonna like fucking pole vault like a fucking one of those lumbers straight through somebody's head. It would be awesome. So good. He's just like, I don't need to step on your trap. I'll kill you from here. You know what I mean? Like that would be dope. But no, he just kind of walks onto the electric grid.
He just was a caveman at that point. He had his club, big lumbering oaf and everything. Because I do like how they do try to add a bit of conflict at the end whenever Dr. Carrington is like holding a gun to them, be like, no, I'm not going to let you turn the generator back on. We need this thing alive and everything. And he does try to shoot him, but then they get the gun from him. Yeah. And then he decides to run out and attempt to diplomatize with the thing.
Right, he's like, please, you must understand that I'm not trying to hurt you, you know, blah, blah, blah. And the monster does just, like, sit there and listen to him, and then just smacks him out of the way.
And I don't know if Dr. Carrington died or not from that. It's not confirmed.
It's not. He was definitely at least unconscious, just lying in the background there. But...
yeah, doing that. But yeah, whenever it came to just defeating him and everything, it was just like, okay, yeah, it's dead. And then they have like their talk, and then their whole spiel of like, look out for the skies and everything. So
yeah, everything after the monster dying was like poo-poo quality for me. But...
yes, I would most certainly agree with that. But it's like the small nuances of this film that I do appreciate, like the small goofy moments, like throwing an electric blanket on an ice thing.
It's just the amount of L's that the fucking Air Force took that day was like, oops, we blew up a spaceship right after we found it. Like, literally not even minutes after we found it. We're like, well, let's get it out of the ice real quick. Oops. Well, let's haul this monster into our base, and then, put an electric blanket on it. Oops. And then, let it escape through the door because we didn't decide to lock up this facility where this monster that 2 people on watch have claimed is still alive in there. It's like L after L after L, dude. And then the science team was like, well, we can't let the Air Force do all the loserdom. We have to just not tell anybody else that the creatures was in this room and is going to come back for more blood. Instead, we'll put 2 unarmed scientists, 2 little geeky boys, in this room with nothing to fight it but some cabbages and see what happens. And then they're like, oops, they died. Like, this is the smartest guy in the universe. Dr. Carrington's like, yes, my genius plan is not to tell the people with guns that the thing that's been actively killing us is going to come back.
Oh my gosh. I want to see your version of the thing from another.
I would just be the reporter up until the point where he is stupid. That would be if I was in this movie, that would be the role I play.
Did we ever find out if he got his photo?
Yeah. I feel like if you could just literally copy-paste this movie into 2023 and, like, change some details, shit would have been fire. There was a cool plot line that I thought they were setting up, and then it went nowhere, and that's whenever they're walking with the Geiger counter for the first time to hunt him down, and he's like, oh, I'm getting something, and then the doctor's like, no, that's a misreading. You're next to the radiation room where we keep all the nuclear isotopes.
I thought that was going to add up to something.
Yeah, there were so many things that could have added up to. First, I still didn't know if this thing could shape shift or not, so I thought, oh, is it Dr. Carrington? Is he the thing right now? And that's why it's going off incredibly while he's standing next to it, and he made up an excuse like, no, it's just because you're next to the radiation, because they turn off the machine right after that. And I was like, oh shit, he's already in. He's one of them. And then, of course, that wasn't anything. Or I was like, it's the fucking radiation room. Are they gonna, like, build a nuke and destroy this whole fucking... They were like,
so good.
Like, oh, like, what if the doctor's plant experiment did, or the monster's reproduction experiment, and suddenly there's like fucking 3 of them, and they're like, oh shit, we gotta kill it before there's 100, and they take over the fucking planet, and then they just nuke the whole fucking base. That would be a way to end the movie. But no, they don't do anything interesting with that. They just throw out a detail and then let it just gets swept away in the snow with all the other cool details that they set up and did nothing with because they were too busy trying to do one-liners about how the captain is sleeping with the woman. Anyway, I felt like this movie had a lot of potential that in places were squandered.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you have so much great insight on this film because I didn't know what the hell I was going to talk about.
I probably missed a lot because there was definitely
not
some
as much as
scenes
me, bud.
where
I will bet $100 on that.
I was trying to pay attention.
You did a much better job than I did because I promise I was genuinely trying to listen to a lot of it, but times where I was like zoned out, I'm like trying to find the pickup part again.
It was like I recognized the artistic merit of this movie. I felt like it was a good movie from a cinema history perspective, but it was like I was watching a fucking ballet or something. It was like,
Yeah.
ooh, I know this is good in art, but it's just, I'm struggling to internalize that. But
Yes, that is such a good analogy. Oh my gosh. I mean, you've had... I can't even compare to your bullet points you've brought up and everything. The only other thing I could say is I nearly keeled over laughing at the beginning of the film whenever... at the Air Force base or whatever they have, whenever they go to, like, the person that runs the Air Force, like, close that door. Yeah. Close that door. It's cold.
Come in, Sergeant. Now close that door. like immediately as soon as he opens it. Sorry, sir. Yeah.
Like, it was just immediate.
Yeah.
And it just ended up being the funniest thing alive every time.
I thought it was like unintentional and it was just bad acting at the beginning, but the second time they did it, and then as I witnessed some of the humor throughout the film, I was like, no, that was on purpose, and that was a good bit. But
oh my gosh, but yeah, that was one bit, and that's what I can appreciate about the film. Even though, like I said, there are just a lot of weird points, and the monster is ultimately, definitely good. I would be interested. I mean, they did create a remake of The Thing in 2011, but I've heard nothing about that film. I have not heard a single thing about that film.
You know, I don't often recommend this, but I feel like this movie would probably be good with subtitles.
Yes.
Like, turn the subs on. If you're not normally a subtitle person, it might help with this movie to follow what the fuck's happening.
In all honesty, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Just being able to, like, read and hear just to retain stuff. Because usually I'm not a subtitle guy unless it's specifically in a foreign language. Then please slap those subtitles on. Right. Because I like looking at the cinematography of the film and everything and just really taking it in. As opposed to subtitles, I usually have to look down quickly.
Right. Or just like... you read the subtitle faster than they say it, so it can really spoil a punchline or a good moment or
yes,
whatever.
I'm exactly the same way.
So I tend not to. But even whenever I watch, like, The Great British Bake Off, it's not like I don't understand English. It's just they're saying weird things because they're in the UK. And I don't necessarily... Maybe their accents are a little thick or whatever. Yeah. So I pop on the subtitles so I can follow along, because I would rather... spoil a punchline for myself than miss, half the dialogue.
That's a good observation. So, yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with Aaron. Watch it with subtitles. Yeah. Definitely watch it with subtitles, so that way you can pick up even more of what everybody is saying. Because, good Lord Almighty, you need as much help as you can get through this film just to make sure you're staying on track with what the plot and exposition is.
And I do think the writing is clever, but I compared it to, like, Aaron Sorkin dialogue, because it's like that. It's just like blah 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 blah, but you do punchline blah blah blah. It's just like, all right, well, yeah, slow down. Like, this is great, but slow down, buddy.
Oh my gosh, Besides all that, Aaron, anything else you want to talk about with this film? Any tidbits or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
I think I got it all in my manic sporadic way.
No, it was terrific. Honestly, this episode's been a lot of fun for me. Like, I've been having more fun listening to you talk than actually trying to come up with any clever pit or
Well,
anything like that?
I definitely just ramble on whenever a movie like this. It is rich in detail, in lore, in character. It has a lot going for it. It's just the format in which it's executed lets it down in a couple ways. But I can talk about it for a long time because I was like, this was neat. I wonder where this was going. I like what they did here. But then it's just like, overall as a total package, the way they slapped it together is like, I really wish they did a couple things different.
Well, in all honesty, I thought it would only be really, really bad films where you would get this much of thought.
That when there's a lot to talk about when they fuck up,
Yes, for sure. So, it'll definitely be very curious on what you think about the next film, because it's definitely going to be a different type of film, because we're definitely going back to a film that was filmed in 1984.
Okay.
And it is themed around Christmas.
Okay.
It is a Christmas horror film, and I don't think you've ever heard of it before specifically, but basically the title of the film is after a popular Christmas song, Silent Night.
Okay, Violent Night.
You are super close. Think of another synonym for deadly.
Does it rhyme with silent?
No.
Okay.
It's about as like, honestly, Violent Night would have been a better title. I am not joking you.
I think that is a movie that's coming out this year, isn't it? With a Santa Claus killer.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's like
that's
I think it's like a John Wick film or something. Like, yes, it's not that film. Although I'd be curious to see how that film is. But think of something that starts with D.
Deadly Night.
Yes.
Is that really what it's called?
I'm telling you, it is so by the numbers with the name.
Deadly Night.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
You have such a face of concern.
I just don't know, because
going in.
sometimes you put on a movie that's like bad, but it's a cult classic. And sometimes we put on really good movies that so I shouldn't judge a movie by its movie title, I guess. But
let's not go that far, buddy.
I don't know how good this is gonna be just by the title alone.
Yes, it'll definitely be an interesting watch, and definitely probably the most appropriate time of year to watch the film. So thank you. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode, and we'll see y'all again next time when we're popping the scary with Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Oh, it's a colon? Silent Night? Colon?
It's a comma. I added two big...
comma.
Yeah, a comma. So,
Silent Night? Deadly Night.
Even better. I couldn't have done it by myself, I needed like maybe a semicolon or something like that. Maybe.
This fucking movie.
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @CoalkirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're popping the scary.